Welcome back. According to Hume International, the ongoing egg shortage crisis requires immediate legislative intervention. This will give assurances for importers to step up and plug the gap on the shelves. Fred Hume, Managing Director of Hume International, says government needs to intervene. He joins us now for more on this story. Thank you so much, Mr. Hume, for speaking to us on Newsnight this evening. If we could, I'd like to talk about the chicken and then get around to the egg in just a moment, if we could. And there seems to be different feedback from different sectors or different elements of the poultry industry. Some companies and industry bodies are in favor of relaxing import duties on poultry to allow for affordable imports at this time when so many low-income households are severely impacted by shortages. What's your position on that?
Annelie, yeah, there are, of course, different players. We as importers have one view. I'm sure domestic producers of poultry have another view. We are not in favor of a removal of all import duties, even for a short period of time. We believe that would have devastating consequences for the local poultry industry long term, and that's not something that we want. The local poultry industry employ a lot of people, and they fill a vital role in food security in this country. That's not what we have an issue with. What we do, however, have an issue with is the fact that at a time when the local industry their output is severely constrained and largely due to matters outside of their control. We find that they are, of course, struggling with severe load shedding, as are all manufacturing concerns in South Africa, as are most players in industry. We ourselves are not spared. Electricity costs in the cold stores that we run around the country have increased dramatically over the course of the past few years. So nobody's been spared. And certainly, the local poultry industry can't claim to have been solely affected by this, by this issue. They, of course, don't have any control over the current avian flu, that epidemic that's sweeping the country. Government could possibly have played more of a role in curtailing the spread of this disease by compensating farmers more fairly and more speedily. But that's possibly a question for another day.
Just looking at the short to medium term picture and the prognosis for not just the poultry sector but for eggs as well, how long are these shortages expected to last, and when do we get back to normality?
We've been told by the local poultry industry that they expect this supply output crisis to correct itself come February of next year. But very difficult to predict how long it will take to get this bird flu epidemic under control. It's currently still ongoing. So I guess it really is anyone's guess how long this takes. We do need urgent intervention, to shore up the lack of output this side. Certainly, government hasn't made it easy over the course of the last few years. The poultry master plan was signed earlier this year, and which introduced punitive anti-dumping duties on poultry imports from most of our major trading partners. South Africa has also failed to reopen countries that were closed due to bird flu, but that have now been declared free and have resumed shipping to other parts of the world. We've also been in constant communication with Delrod. We have been asking for regionalization in large countries like Brazil and Canada. We've been asking for heat treatment of poultry on arrival. All, in essence, I guess, to get ahead of this, bird flu is a recurring problem. I mean, bird flu is endemic in poultry flocks around the world. It happened last year. It's happening this year. It's going to happen again next year. We need to put permanent measures in place that would deal with this. And our suggestion has been that in the event of more than a certain number of birds being culled, and of course this is still up for debate and discussion, the government should automatically make a rebate permit available, allowing for importation of poultry, not free of all import duties, but at least free of anti-dumping duties, for a fixed period, for argument's sake, 6 months or 12 months. We need some certainty to respond as importers. Currently, we're shooting in the dark. we don't really know, what to expect. There's been a lot of talk of these duties being suspended or lifted, or rebate permits being applied, but to date, nothing concrete has been put out, nothing that we can really use as a basis to act on.
So let's talk about eggs now. We already import
Yes.
eggs annually, but the volumes, you say, are not high enough to bridge the gap in the local demand since those shortages have started. What kind of volumes do we need to be importing for there to be eggs on the shelves?
Okay, South Africa has been importing chicken for a long time, and it's noteworthy, it's worth mentioning that currently only about 20% of the poultry consumed in this country is imported. Moving to eggs, South Africa really doesn't have a history of importing table eggs. We import egg powders, which are used in industry. We import egg pulp, that's been coming, but table eggs very rarely come. At this time, we've been importing, South Africa as a poultry industry have been importing fertilized eggs to rebuild their flocks, but table eggs very rarely have been imported. And unfortunately, we are hampered by Regulation 345, which stipulates that one can't sell eggs that have been hatched, or excuse me, we can't sell eggs more than 40 days after being hatched. And this, of course, is a little bit antiquated because it deals with eggs stored at ambient temperatures. Refrigerated eggs can last for up to 6 months. Delrod recently informed us that we could import under the current legislation, and on arrival, we could apply for dispensation. But we are not in the position of taking risks of that magnitude. We can't be floating containers of eggs worth hundreds of thousands of rands and then, run the gauntlet, and we may or may not be granted this dispensation in a timely manner or fashion, which may then result in the eggs having to be destroyed. So I don't believe that we can import table eggs for sale in the ambient format. They would have to be sold chilled or refrigerated. They could also be sold to processors of egg pulp in the country, but we need that distinction to be made between ambient and chilled eggs.
So in other words, the grading, packaging and bringing in of eggs, there are certain regulations that need to be relaxed during this period as we're experiencing what is essentially a crisis for many consumers. Is there consensus among industry role players on the measures that should be taken to be able to approach government, as a collective to say this is what needs to happen and to have a better sort of, foot in the argument?
Certainly not. Certainly not. I don't believe that importers, local domestic producers, and government have sat around a table, enough to discuss these matters in a responsible manner. Ultimately, we of course all are we have vested interests here, but nobody's considering the fact that the consumer ultimately has to pay the price. And we are not saying that we want to leave the local industry open to unfair trade practices. We are simply asking that we, as a collective, discuss and agree on a manner in which we can solve the current shortages that we face and we are likely to face for the ensuing couple of months. But unfortunately, no, I don't believe that enough has been done and there's enough of a, shall we say, focused attempt to address this crisis. We're all falling around here, shouting the odds, but very little concrete has actually, nothing concrete, in my opinion, really has materialized.
Thank you so much for speaking to us. Plenty of room there then for consensus to be reached and for those discussions to be held so that we can address the situation. As you say, we're likely to face these shortages until at least February. Thank you once again for your time. That was Fred Hume from Hume International talking to us about the persistent shortages, not only of poultry, but also of eggs.